and welcome back to Stories from the River. I'm here with Heather Greenwood, the director of the Memory Maker Experience, and someone who helped spearhead our leadership team's venture to New York City for World Business Forum New York City 2023. We're here in the midst of a brand new series where we're recapping each of the keynote speakers that we heard, and we're going to talk about Stephen Ritz from the Green Bronx Machine. So Heather, welcome back to the pod.
Thank you for having me once again.
Frequent guest and guest host. And so Heather's super popular here on the pod, and we love having her. And so we've got a really interesting guy that we're going to talk about. So let me set the stage for us for just a moment.
Welcome to Stories from the River, a show in which we go behind the scenes at Broad River Retail. I've
attended 4 WBFs, 4 World Business Forums in New York City. 2014, I believe, 2015. Then 2022 and 2023, the last 2 years with our Broad River retail leadership team, primarily with 10 of us. And in 2015, I first got introduced to Stephen Ritz of the Green Bronx Machine, and he shared his amazing transformational story. They couldn't get him off the stage. I think he had probably 1,000 slides that he did in like 50 minutes, but then maybe his session kept going another 30 minutes. He was so full of passion and energy and had so much to say. I mean, I think he dialed it back maybe like by 1/10 this time, but it was really interesting because in the lead up to World Business Forum, Heather, Stephen, we connected on LinkedIn, and I hadn't spoken to him for like 8 years when I got to meet him after the show. And it's funny, I took a picture with him and at the Lincoln Center, which is where it was in 2015, the same, because they move it around to Radio City Music Hall, the Javits Center, et cetera. And so this particular year was at the Lincoln Center. And what he was doing then was quite amazing. And also his personal story, like he was way overweight, over 300 pounds. He was a teacher in the Bronx. He lost all this weight. He transformed himself. He got healthy eating. And then he like transformed that community and old buildings and then started growing plants and helping their students get healthy. So it's a little bit of a teaser, but then he wanted to really come back to WBF, to World Business Forum, and speak again. And so he said, hey, help me get in touch with Chris and get on the agenda. And I never saw him on the agenda, I think, until like we were there. I'm like, wait a second. They added Stephen Ritz. He's coming back. And so it was really cool to see he like hasn't stopped and his energy hasn't stopped. So first reactions, first responses. This was the first time I'm assuming you interacted with Stephen.
Yes.
And so tell us what you thought.
I didn't take one note. And you and I have been to several of these things together, and like I'm a note taker. So the fact that I didn't put pencil to paper is like mind blowing, but that's how captivating he is. I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know what he was going to talk about. He came on the stage and it was just like heart and passion and love pouring out of him, talking a mile a minute. Again, a lot of slides in a quick amount of time, but what like radiated for me above all is in those moments, I was a little bit emotional and kind of had tears in my eyes as he taught. What he's doing is beyond incredible. It's amazing to see the difference he's making in the lives of children. And as a parent and as a human, it made me think in those moments as I'm sitting there like, I got to do something. What am I doing sitting here? Am I making the impact I want to make? I should do more. I should help more. And so just hearing Stephen and the difference he's making and the kids from the Green Bronx Machine who came out on the stage at the end, like Stephen found a need and he's taken it and he's grown it. And so it just begs the question for me in that room as a leader and as a human and as a mom, like, you see a need and you got to do something about it. It's not good enough to just sit back and think, oh, maybe someone else will do it. But Stephen took it and he did it. And what he's done is incredible and grown so much and impacted so many lives.
There's so much to impact there. And you're right. You want to like be on his team.
Yes.
You want to join him. And that's the like magnetism of, I think, vision and purpose and someone who actually gets in the arena and does it. So let's maybe start there. Like he discovered his purpose, which is to transform his life and then to transform students' lives with healthy living, with not like letting things be ugly or nasty or boring or dilapidated, changing environments, changing health, changing an approach. So he found a purpose, which is like just giving him this fuel that just won't burn out. he's got a vision that just keeps growing. I feel like he's what started in the Bronx and taking over the Bronx. Now he's in the last 8 years, he's met with President Obama. He's been to the White House, what they did during COVID, and now how they're planting these going into schools all over the country and proliferating probably across the world, the globe. It's wow. Okay. Purpose, vision, and it's really spreading like kudzu from one man's magnetism and desire and just waking up every day with this boundless purpose and vision. What was your response to that?
I think, again, we think about purpose and we think about vision, and it's easy to have them, and you could say that, but to actually take action on them. He saw in the neighborhood of the South Bronx kids who were struggling from a health perspective, obesity and poor health, and then how that impacts academics and mental health. And what he saw was, how can he go in and how can he change that? And through growing their own produce and learning how to cook and care for it and eat healthy, all these things that come with it. So not only did he see that there was an issue, but he took action that had outcomes. And then he continued to grow it and ask, what else, taking it outside of the South Bronx and continuing to grow it in other schools. And now it's become a curriculum where you think any school can go in and do this. And so you think about the future of our country and our world, and it begins with our children. If our children aren't healthy and they're not in a safe space and they're not cared for and they're not given those things, where do they go from here? And so what Stephen has really started is just a very small piece of that, but already seeing results around grades and academic success and health and all these things that, as we know, radiates. It takes one kid to have that impact.
It's that ripple effect.
Yeah.
It's that organizational wake. And it's so easy to say, well, it's so big of a problem. I can't make a dent. I can't make a ripple. I'm just not going to do anything. And he said, no, I can do something. I will do something. We'll start small and then we'll just keep it going. And I didn't take any notes, but I tried to take as many pictures of the slides as I could. And I think the purpose of it wasn't to tell his full story, but it was to learn about what they're doing and to inspire other leaders. You can take action, you can do, and you can make a difference. And there's some stats that I'd love to just read here. Yeah. In 2021 and 2022, the Green Bronx Machine, and I also want to introduce the Green Bronx Machine by virtue of this episode. It said they rescued 10,000 plus pounds of food. They delivered 100,000 plus pounds of food. They helped feed 2,300 people daily. They grew 5,000 plus pounds of local Bronx food. They brought students on socially distant field trips. They held online cooking classes. They created local farm stands. They hosted more than 200 digital lessons. They trained hundreds of teachers. They delivered food weekly to 30 cancer patients and 55 vulnerable families in their community. And so that was just one slide. Another statement here: diversity is a fact, equity is a choice, inclusion is an action, belonging is an outcome. Green Bronx Machine is for life, which I thought was really powerful. He's got these great one-liners.
So many.
Education, not asphyxiation. That's one that really sticks with me. And just there's some stats about growing food and the impact. And so he says the percentage of students who know it is possible to grow and eat healthy foods in school before their program, 0%, after 100%. The percentage of students who know it is possible to grow food with less space and water before it was 15%, after it's 100%. The percentage of students who know it is possible to grow more food vertically before it was only 7%, after 100%, because they're growing vertically. They're just taking over spaces with plants.
Yeah.
And the percentage of students who know plants require nutrients to grow before it was 50%, after 100%. And that's just on growing food. And then on eating habits, you had a few other stats here, which I think are important to share. The percentage of students who talk about healthy eating habits with their families before the Green Bronx, less than 4%, after over 50%. The percentage of students who understand the relationship between fresh fruits and vegetables, diabetes, heart disease, and obesity before it was 12%, so 1 out of 8, and after it was over 90%.
Wow.
9 out of 10. And the percentage of students who know how to prepare or define a nutritious meal before it was less than 10%, only 9%, and after it says it was 93%.
That's huge.
Isn't that cool?
That's huge.
I mean, and then, just one more stat picture here on the teacher response.
Yeah.
59% reported that their students improved their collaboration skills. We love that collaboration core value.
Mm-hmm.
And that's great. You're working with other students.
Yeah.
77% reported that the experience had a positive experience on their students' families' lives. So they go home and have more positive interaction. 94% of the teachers reported that their students remained highly engaged throughout the project. Engagement's high. 94% reported that the program provides skills or knowledge that students would not get otherwise. 95% felt that the program was well sequenced and logically organized. He's been doing it a long time, probably perfected his craft. And 95% reported that the program enhanced knowledge or a skill they use as a teacher. So he's going in and really enhancing the school programs. And I thought the most powerful part maybe was when he brought out the students.
Yes, that was awesome.
I mean, and so you see real life students, and I think they spoke, right? And then they talked about their experience.
They didn't. They waved, and I think it was just this overwhelming. I mean, here were children that didn't have access to these things. And so you think about accessibility, they didn't have access to fresh food. So if you don't have access to it, how can you learn how to cook it? How can you know what a healthy meal looks like? And he's provided that. So to see these kiddos walk out on the stage and, I mean, in a huge theater full of leaders and wave and smile and laugh and just, you talk about engagement, but how about just joy and fulfillment? You see it on their faces. Someone's pouring into them, loving them, and then it ripple effects back into their home lives and back to their families and siblings and parents. And across the neighborhood, which is what Stephen has seen.
Now, Heather, you're a mom of 3 young children.
Yes.
Henry, Graham, and Chloe.
Yes.
Ages 8, 6, and 2.
Yep.
And you and Brian are all about wellness, well-roundedness, letting them pursue, what their interests are. And kids come out how they come out. They all have their own personalities.
That's true.
And, but what would this program mean? Like, I know that you're about like teaching them about healthy eating, and they probably have, they're not growing up in the South Bronx, right? So, but what would this program mean, you think, to like your children in terms of understanding healthy habits and healthy eating habits? And for you as a mom, how would you respond to that?
As a parent, and you deal with this too with your kids, is, it's not always an easy thing to convince your kids to eat vegetables, right? It's the green thing on your plate. It's yucky. I don't want to touch it. Like, my kids still aren't really great at eating vegetables. So I think it goes back to that education piece where they hear it at home, but then they also hear it at school. And sometimes it's different when you hear it from your peers and you hear it from your teacher who they love and respect. And so I think you can try to teach it at home, but so much when they're young is what they learn at school, and they learn in their communities amongst their peers. So we try to talk a lot about healthy eating, and Henry had his 6-year-old well check yesterday, and he came home and he said, "Mom, the doctor said I need to eat more fruits and vegetables." Well, what did you tell the doctor? I hate vegetables. So, okay, well, great. But you try to, instill these things in your kids. You want them to be healthy and have long, happy lives and to be successful. And so I think a program, what Stephen has offered, is not all kids have the ability or the access to have that. And so he's providing it no matter who you are, where you are. Everybody belongs and everybody deserves to have those things. And so I think what Stephen's doing is really radiating that amongst all communities, whether you live in the South Bronx or you live here in Fort Mill, South Carolina. Every kid deserves that education.
Yeah. And whether you're in a poor community and hey, you're going to get like, just what's ever easier or convenient or frozen foods or a fast food or sodas or high fructose corn syrup or sugary foods, whatnot. Like, I didn't eat the healthiest growing up, and my kids are a lot better than me, and I attribute a lot of that to my wife, who gives them, but to get Luke to eat 3 tops of broccoli is great. But, I think like the kids are involved in growing the food themselves. Their hands are in it. They understand it. And they're getting that education early on, and it's cool. It's accepted.
Yeah.
It's like part of the culture. And so, what we learned from Marcus Collins, it's cultural.
Yeah.
And so when you see other people doing it and it's cool and it's like just as convenient as going to McDonald's. And I'm not trying to, I'm just using that as an example of like something that like going to the gas station and grabbing a, whatever's convenient or prepackaged or what have you. Like, this is healthy, sustainable growth, and it's making it accessible. And it's just a better way to live. And then Stephen lived it out himself, like having been someone who he says, look, I used to be over 300 pounds, and he transformed himself. And like to see him 8 years later, and he still, kept that weight off and living responsibly and healthy. Like he lives it every single day. And I've been on a health and wellness check the last few years myself. And maybe I'll put the picture in this episode of my 2015 picture with Stephen, and then my 2023 picture, because I saw him out in the hallway and he made me put the hat on. He said, here, do you want to wear the hat? Sure, I'll wear the hat. He said, a lot of people wear the hat. I was trying to think, how many people have worn this hat?
Yep.
That was like the same hat from like 8 years. That's okay. I'll put the hat on. I wore the hat. Our podcast producers will probably show the pictures of me and the before and after, and I'll own it. But I think it's so important to have wellness in just all of our habits and disciplines, from eating, from education, from relationships. It's so important. So I applaud Stephen for what he's doing, for what he's doing with these children at such a young age. They will transform the world. They will make the world better. They will know that they can make a difference, because one man made a difference with his bold purpose, his internal doing it himself and not making excuses, and his big vision that just magnifies and gravitates people towards wanting to join and help. And then being inspired to take on a big vision or big, to say like, okay, what's something that we can? So maybe it's not this, but there's probably something that you can make a difference in your life, your kids' lives, or the next generation's lives, and help pay it forward and pass it down. So I thought that this introduction to Stephen Ritz and the Green Bronx Machine is great. I applaud his efforts, and I'd love to help people learn more about him. And Stephen, if you're watching this podcast, keep up the great work. We really enjoyed seeing you at World Business Forum. I'm glad they brought you back this year. Heather, final words.
I think we hear that learning should be fun, right? And so you and we talk about a lot about learning in our careers, but Stephen is a fun guy. And so I think you got to learn more about him, the energy, the excitement, what he's doing. Yes, it starts in his heart, but he lives it out. He's a fun guy. He's entertaining. And I think that's part of it. For a kid, you got to be entertained, and you have to make learning fun, and you have to find ways to be silly and to bring joy to them. And he does it, and he lives it. And, I've only seen Stephen once, but I got to imagine that's how he always is. And that's how he takes care of people, through humor, through care, and making learning really fun. When kids are engaged and they're learning, just like adults, all of a sudden things kind of open up and you're more interested and you're willing to receive what's being given. So amazing.
That is such a great point and final takeaway. Not only making it fun, but learning by doing.
Yeah.
Because their hands are involved.
Absolutely.
They're doing it. And so you're going to have future chefs, if not for other people, at least just for their family at home. And they'll know how to do more things, because it's like that Montessori approach to learning, which is learn by doing. But they're active. They're going to retain that knowledge. And it's fun, which is a lot of great things. I know whenever we do something as a leadership team that's fun and engaging with others, involves teamwork, collaboration, and then we are actively involved in doing it, it's fun, it's memorable, we retain the knowledge, and we want to do more of that. So that's a great final point. Okay, that's it for this recap episode from World Business Forum, New York City 2023, the Stephen Ritz episode. Thanks so much for joining us, and check us out next time for more episodes from this series or from previous series. We hope to bring you fresh new content every single week here from the river. Thanks so much.
Thanks for listening to Stories from the River. To check out more episodes, visit storiesfromtheriver.com. Join us again next week, and remember to like, rate, and subscribe to the podcast.